Good morning. It's March 9th, and today we are going to talk about truth. Where does the truth reside? To me, the truth resides at the center. Truth has a gravity. For a crowd can be misled and pushed towards extremes or divided into camps, but over time, the truth resurfaces. The center is where proof, shared facts, and honest conversation pull us back together. The pull of the center. History has a pattern that repeats itself. People get carried away by fear, by rumor, by anger, by the promise that one side can defeat the other and finally win the argument once and for all. For a while, the noise grows loud, and loud enough that it feels permanent. Entire societies have followed ideas that have later proven false. Yet something interesting happens over time. The truth outs itself. Evidence surfaces. Documents appear. Witnesses bear witness. Reality reasserts itself. The record eventually corrects the lie. I think about that force as the center. That's the center, and we're always returned to the center. The center is not a political party, is not a weak compromise for the sake of avoiding conflict. The center is something much simpler. The center is where gravity lives. It is where proof lives. It is where shared facts bring us back to reality. When we drift too far away from center, confusion and conflict follow. Let's take a lesson from Aesop. Aesop understood this long before modern politics, and he told a story called The Belly and the Members. In this fable, the hands complain that they work all day, the belly does nothing. The feet say they carry the body everywhere where the belly sits idle. Even the mouth joins the argument, insisting that it does the work of eating while the belly just takes the reward. So the members make a decision. They stop feeding the belly. If the belly wants food, it can get it itself. For a short time, they hold the line. But soon the hands grow weak. The feet struggle to stand. The whole body begins to fail. Only then do they understand the truth. The belly was never idle. It was the center of the system, quietly turning food into strength and strength into every part of the body. Without that center, the body collapses. When the members misunderstood how their system worked, they began to realize they needed to change their attitude. And today we see a similar misunderstanding today. We are constantly encouraged to believe that the other side is the problem. The narrative's simple and emotional. One group against another, neighbor versus neighbor, label against label. The message says that victory comes when one side defeats the other. But systems don't work that way. A society is more like the body. Top story. When every part depends on the other, when the parts turn against each other, the entire system weakens. Division interrupts the circulation of truth. The politics of control. A friend of mine, Deacon, once told me something that stuck with me. He told me that politics often comes down to a struggle over resources. Who controls them? Who moves them? Who benefits from them? This observation carries an uncomfortable truth. When power becomes the goal, misleading people becomes a useful tool. If a population can be convinced that the real enemy is their neighbor instead of a broken system, then attention moves away from the real problem, and division becomes the strategy. History gives us many examples of this pattern. Leaders mislead population, crowd follow narratives that feel emotionally satisfying, and for a while, the story holds. And then the truth eventually surfaces. It always does. Right now, we're living through a moment where the loudest voices sit at the edges of the conversation. The middle ground is treated as a weakness. Instead of discussion, we're encouraged to pick a side and defend it at all cost. The narrative becomes simple: us versus them, red versus blue, left versus right. This is dangerous, not because disagreement exists. Disagreement is healthy, it's how ideas improve. The danger appears when we stop listening, when we start labeling to dismiss. Once conversations disappears, the truth has nowhere to land. The question becomes, how do we return to the center? Because the center is where the truth resides, not because it splits every argument down the middle, but because it forces us to ask better questions. What do the facts show? What can we actually prove? What problem are we trying to solve together? Most of the time, when neighbors sit down long enough and talk honestly, we discover that our goals are not that different. We want safe communities. We want opportunities for our children. We want fairness and accountability from those in power. The solutions that emerge from our conversations are rarely perfect. Rarely does one person, control the entire conversation, but the solutions are often good enough for most of us to move forward together. This is perhaps the reason why I got off the couch. I recognized that this moment was pushing me to step forward. I began to see things drifting away from center. We repeat the mistake from Aesop's story. The parts of the body begin fighting each other while the system itself weakens. But if we return to the center, something powerful becomes possible again. Conversation returns. Trust begins to rebuild. Solutions appear. The center is not surrender. The center is where the real work happens. The lesson. The lesson from Aesop's fable reminds us something simple and something profound. The hands need the belly. The belly needs the hands. Every part depends on the health of the whole. Our country works the same way. Truth has gravity. Even when we drift away from it, that gravity continues pulling us back. All we have to do is slow down long enough to listen, examine the facts, and sit at the same table again. That is where the truth lives. That is the center. So let's sit down this week. Sit down with your neighbor and ask a simple question. What problem in our community can we solve together if we focus on facts instead of labels? Start that conversation. Listen carefully. Look for the shared ground. Because when we return to center, solutions become possible again. Will you return to the center with me? Join the movement at schoolguard2026.org. Thank you for listening.